Welcome back, everybody. Thanks to the two gentlemen, young gentlemen, that will be representing South Africa at an international tournament or the World Championship kickboxing tournament, Jamie and Ethan. Right now on the couch, we are joined by Mike Greef from Equestrian, who will be telling us more about the World Championship happening in the USA. Good evening, Mike, and welcome to Sports Federation TV.
Thank you.
So your dressage, obviously this is a term that in the equestrian terminology you guys sort of are used to. Maybe you can just tell the viewers a bit more and maybe just educate us a bit more. What is dressage actually?
Dressage is probably like ballet for horses. It's done in a confined space, 60 by 20 meter arena, and the horses have to carry out certain movements between certain markers, for which they get 10 points from the judge if it's absolutely perfect and down.
So this is now where they lift the knees and where they move a certain way and where they trot. Or
you're going to get me shot here because the dressage people are watching, but yes.
What I also picked up in our conversation is that you have also been or there's a lot of transport, a lot of logistics involved in preparing for a world event. We'll touch on that a bit later on, the World Equestrian Games that is taking place in the United States. In fact, almost less than a month from now.
30 days from yesterday.
30 days from yesterday, and then we also have the team that we will also look into a bit later on. But can you just give us an idea as to exactly how challenging is it transporting horses from one city or from one province, let alone from one country to another?
Okay, the South Africans have a huge difficulty because of African horse sickness, and so any horse that gets exported from here, whether it's a racehorse, whether it's a child's pony, whether it's a sport horse, they have to go through quite stringent quarantine. They do 40 days, 60 days in fact in Cape Town, in the centre of Kenilworth Racecourse, which is a quarantine station. They then can go via Mauritius, where they do another 90 days or thereabout, and then they can only go into Europe. Okay. So all of our horses, for instance, going to the World Equestrian Games already living in Europe, and they have been there. They either were bought in Europe, or, for instance, one of our ex-Cape Town girls, Lisa Williams, she's taken the horse from here. It's been a long road. He probably left here in about August or September last year.
So how does that work? So let's say, for example, how long in advance before does a rider qualify? Because obviously, if you qualify 8 months in advance, the timelines you've just given us now sounds like you need to have at least a year to get your horse to Europe or to Asia or to America, wherever the events are taking place.
Yeah, Lynn, World Equestrian Games, which is what's happening now, is our World Championship, and it happens in the alternate 2 years to the Olympics. So every 2 years we have either Equestrian Games or Olympics. Now, for the World Equestrian Games, for instance, this coming up one, the qualifying period opened on the 1st of January 2017. Okay. So effectively you have 18 months to get your qualifications. Olympics, which is going to happen in Japan in 2 years' time, 1st of January next year is when the qualification period opens.
For the Olympics.
For the Olympics.
Yeah.
But it's not just the 18 months. I think it's a lifelong ambition, or it's a lifelong dream. And
maybe we can just touch on as to how do athletes actually qualify for the World Equestrian Games and also for the Olympics. How exactly does the qualification criteria are stipulated?
There are different disciplines. In fact, we take in 5 different disciplines to World Equestrian Games, in show jumping, dressage, eventing, vaulting, and endurance. So they all have different, each discipline has their different qualifications, but they have to have qualified at a certain standard in their discipline before they can go. Now, there's been a lot of people, a lot of tears, a lot of money spent in people trying to qualify, and they haven't made it. And unfortunately, that's the way the sport is, that's the way life is.
So is it based on points, or is it based on time, or
based on ability in most cases?
Okay, so what exactly would a judge be looking at? Obviously, in the dressage you explained, it would be points. But like, how does let's say for example endurance or the show jumping? How does that?
Okay, in endurance, both the horse and the athlete have to have achieved at a certain level, not necessarily have won competitions, but have achieved at a certain level.
Okay.
In show jumping, they have to have won a World Cup qualifier show jumping competition,
Okay.
which gives them almost carte blanche to go in. Otherwise, they have to have jumped at a certain number of competitions, and that's why they go to Europe. Certain number of competitions at the higher level in a certain score. The eventing horses have to have gone to certain high-level competitions, and they have to have 2 or 3 different levels before they can even be considered.
Now, I would imagine a horse's lifespan, obviously, let's say for example, is 30 years. Of the 30 years, there's only a certain amount that it can be competitive. What is the competitive sort of lifespan of a horse?
It again depends. Racehorses sort of start racing at 2, and generally by 5 or 6 they finish their career. And fortunately, a lot of those then go in to become sport horses or other. A show jumper probably peaks at about 9 to 13 years. Having said that, they can go on. A horse called King's Gambit won the South African Grand Prix at the age of 21.
Okay.
So it again, it depends on how they looked after and what their ability is.
And then also obviously your riders have got a team of workers that or coaches or people that look after the horses. What exactly comprises of a athlete's backroom staff, if I can call it that?
Okay, well generally, certainly the top riders will have a string of horses. You don't get to the top just with one. So you'll have a string of horses, and I'm talking now European horses where you'll find some of those top riders actually have maybe 2 strings, and one will be at a show this week waiting for the rider to fly in while he's jumping at a show somewhere else.
Yeah.
So basically what you'd have is you'd have grooms who look after the horses, and in any equestrian discipline, let me tell you, it's humbling to see how the grooms love the horses and how they work with them, and how they interact with one another, betting against one another. My horse is better than yours, and it's great.
It's always good to see the camaraderie amongst in any sport.
It's wonderful.
It's brilliant, and those friendships last for years and years to come.
A lot of the grooms, even at the lower levels, you'll find that a lot of the grooms have been with that family for ever and ever and ever, and they're part of the family.
Yeah.
So the grooms are very, very important. But then the support team, if you see as we go now to the World Equestrian Games, we have what's called the chef de keep, and he's the team manager. But each rider will have a groom. They will have a vet that looks after them, although we're taking 2 team vets with us.
Okay.
But the vet's an integral part of any sport horse's life.
Yeah.
The farrier,
I can imagine,
the farrier, the feed merchant. There's lots and lots of people that we don't even consider as being part of that one horse family.
That is there.
That are all integral part of making that horse get to where he gets.
That's amazing. Now we've chatted about sort of the technicalities behind equestrian games. How and why did Mike Greef get involved in? You have been involved in horse racing basically your whole career. You have always been in the horse racing or horse riding or equestrian circles. Can you maybe tell us a bit more how you got involved in horse riding?
Yeah, Elton. Sorry. I grew up in a racing family, although my immediate family weren't, my mother and father weren't involved, but they were both from racing families. So I grew up in a racing family. I've never worked outside of the racing industry. I started competing, in fact, only as an adult.
Okay.
But and eventing, but because I'd ridden in hurdle races and point-to-point races, I was used to what I needed to do. But my first horse I only bought when I started working. My family couldn't afford to look after me, so I became a bit of a groupie, and I used to hang around and pick up a ride here and pick up a ride there. And so in 1966, I was standing outside the show jumping arena in Wetton, which was down behind the Kenilworth Racecourse,
Yeah.
and a man who became a dear friend of mine, Alan Lever, called me and he said, "Do you want to come in and help me?" So I became a show jumping course designer, and then I became a judge, and that's how I've just got involved in it, and I've been doing it forever and ever.
And now you are the chef de mission on the way to the World Equestrian Games later in September. Can you maybe just tell us on the number of athletes going? Is this the first time that we will have 12 athletes, you said, in the 5 disciplines, or has it been the case before?
No, we had quite a lot, and I can't tell you the exact number, but we had more athletes when we went to World Equestrian Games in 2014 in France. We did have more athletes. This time in total we got 5 disciplines represented, and we've got 12 athletes. We've got 5 in endurance racing or endurance riding. We've got 1 eventer. We've got 1 vaulting horse or 1 vaulting athlete, 3 show jumpers, and 2 dressage horses. So that'll make up the 12.
So these 12 have been announced already, or they've been
Yes.
identified already. So
yes, has been announced.
They have been announced early in the week, and as you said early on.
In fact, they were announced last Friday.
Friday, yeah. So now, with these athletes going to the World Equestrian Games, obviously it's a dream come true for most of them. Some of them have been there already. But is the South African team a competitive team? Because people tend to think equestrian sports or sports that aren't outside of the top 3, being the where we compete in, is equestrian South Africa or South African equestrian competitive at international level?
I've got to be a little bit dubious how I say this, because first of all, I believe that if we don't send people, we don't have an aspiration for anybody else to come up.
Yeah.
Having said that, I believe that we've got 2 athletes, and I don't want to name them, but don't be surprised if we don't end up with an athlete in 2 of our disciplines medaling. I've really got a gut feel.
Yeah. The makeup of the team, are they able to compete at the 2022 World Equestrian Games again, or is the case of there has been their last games or the first games? Or?
No. They can go as many times.
They obviously go to a different discipline, or they can move into.
They very seldom at this level swap disciplines.
Okay.
But if you, when we went to Kentucky in 2010, 4 horses went over for the eventing team, and 3 of those riders are still riding.
Okay.
They haven't been back necessarily not necessarily, they haven't been back to the World Equestrian Games, but they are still very competitive in the field back home in South Africa.
Yeah, no, that's good. Mike, time is up. As I said, we could be chatting on this for hours and hours on end.
Can't we do a series?
we can do. But we'll definitely have you back. Maybe 1 or 2 of the riders can join you after your trip back from North Carolina in the States. So all of the best on the 11th of September. You guys are starting, so you guys will probably be leaving a bit sooner than that, I take it.
I leave, in fact, on the 6th to go over, and then the first shipment horses fly out from Liège in Belgium on the 8th. How the World Equestrian Games actually works, because it's such a big organisation, it actually works in 2 weeks. So some of the disciplines in the first week and some in the second. So, for instance, our dressage horses and the event horse fly out the first week. The jumpers only go out the second week.
Yeah.
But it's a big organisation. There's 1,000 athletes, 1,500 horses expected, and
spectators?
500,000 spectators.
Oh, that's awesome.
When I say it's big,
yeah,
it's big. This is not just America. This is big.
It isn't called World Equestrian Games for nothing.
No, not at all.
Mike, all of the best to you and Team South Africa, and I hope those 2 medaling on the only 2 that will medal. I'm sure that out of the 12, there will be a few surprises there. I just have my gut feeling about South African and dominating the world of sport over.
I would love to come back here and tell you I was wrong.
Yeah, let's hope that. Let's hope so. Thanks, Mike. All of the best.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Mike Greef, who is very passionate and very experienced from the world of equestrian. In fact, horse riding in general. Thanks to Mike, and all of the best to the team there. out in the USA. Right now, we grab your phones. We'll be giving you opportunity to win a case of Bashoes, the drink that we've been around since 1899, a very popular and is certainly a household brand name all around Cape Town. If you want to win yourself a case of Bashoes, SMS the word Bashoes to 33090. That's Bashoes to 33090. Congratulations to last week's winner, Roland Daniels. Roland, someone from Sport Federation TV will be in touch with you to get that case of delicious Bashoes to you. We're going to be taking a quick ad break, and when we come back, we'll be chatting to Tug of War, who are preparing for an amazing, a massive international event that's taking place right here in Cape Town. Be back in a sec.